Hi everyone, this is Dhanrajani, President at 3AI, India's largest platform for AI analytics leaders, professionals, and aspirants. And we've got a power-packed panel discussion coming up, which is all about what we call data to decisions lifecycle, business perspective, and technology perspectives out there. More importantly, this is a very apt theme, what we would be talking about, and we have two experts out here. This entire panel discussion is all about demystifying the data strategy and how decision making at scale today, with the advent of analytics and AI, is revolutionizing, reimagining the industry landscape. More importantly, this is contemporary because many of the discussions in the board today amongst the CXO is actually being the focal area around how decision making at scale with AI is getting enabled. To kick off the panel discussion, we have got two marquee speakers lined up. Pankaj Rai. Pankaj Rai is Group Chief Data Analytics Officer at Aditya Birla Group. Pankaj carries a very eminent experience in analytics over the last almost 2+ decades. He's held senior leadership positions at Wells Fargo, Dell, Genpact, Standard Chartered, and Feedback Ventures in the past. And we've got Satyakam Mohanty, Sati as he's fondly known. Sati is again a renowned analytics and AI leader. Now, he's a chief product officer at Fosfor, which is by LTI. And over there, he's spearheading the entire product suite initiatives in terms of data to decision through the product suite of Fosfor. Previously, Sati has been an entrepreneur with stint with Limbic, and that's where he, in fact, unraveled how exactly the decision making with different products happen through analytics AI. And previously, Sati has worked with Genpact, and these two gentlemen, and knowing them personally, I can vouch they'll be a treasure trove of perspective, insights, and a lot of, I would say, nuggets of, I would say, discussions will flow as we move into this panel discussion. Now, to kick off, Pankaj, I would like to start with you, which is all about today. And you've been on a side where you're seeing how organizations, enterprises are consuming analytics AI. Tell us about what are the trends you see today? What are some of the perspectives you see from a market, specifically in terms of how data strategy is enabling organizations to take decisions?
Yeah, Samir, thank you, Samir, and great to be here again with yourself and Sati. I think the perspective that I have started to develop, over the last 1 year, is a lot more on the manufacturing side. This is an area which was not known to me. I've worked largely on the, services and marketing and other areas, but the factory and industry 4.0, some of these areas were, unknown to me because I was working with Dell and Wells Fargo, and some of those companies didn't necessarily require me to get exposed to that. So I'll give you a perspective that I see over here with the Aditya Birla Group, where the whole canvas ranges from cement manufacturing, aluminum manufacturing, carbon black, pulp and fiber, and of course we also have finance and fashion and so forth. So I'll talk a lot more about the manufacturing side because the other side is pretty well known and well documented in the industry. This seems to be not as popular and as well known. So I think the one big thing that I see in these businesses, they are all commodity businesses. So in a commodity business, the revenue side or the price side is not so much in your control. I mean, look at if you're selling aluminum, LME decides your price, or in any other commodity. Brands are not very prevalent. So therefore, the large focus area tends to be on the cost side of it. So I think the type of use cases that we tend to work on are related to energy because aluminum consumes a lot of energy and you can save money over there. Logistics, cement manufacturing consumes a lot of cost on the logistics side, and similarly other businesses where energy this thing, and then of course on the compliance side you have safety and those types of ESG related use cases which cannot necessarily be quantified in dollar terms, but they are very critical nonetheless. So the world of ESG, and then Industry 4.0 and some of these things are becoming more prominent from my side because this is what is the focus area.
Sati, let me shift the conversation to you. And you've been at the helm of affairs and you've seen a lot of technology shifts over the years and what's happened specifically when it comes to analytics AI. Today, the focal point of discussion amongst the senior leaders is about decision making at scale. There is a barrage or surfeit of data which is flowing across the organization. And somewhere organizations have realized the significance of making meaning out of the data. From a technology perspective, and since this is always a kind of a, let's say, an aspect which is less explored, how do you see that shift in technology and specifically analytics, AI tools, solutions coming out where they're redefining the whole decision making at scale?
So, and we've been in this journey together at a certain stage as well. And, we started, if you see a couple of decades ago when we talked about analytics, it was really about trying to say, can I get insights and can I progress those insights into strategies? And that was the core focus. Now, as the world has evolved since then, what has happened is two, three things have happened. One is data has absolutely, progressed to crazy amounts and crazy proportions, and at a really, really accelerated speed. So, if you think about it, to the objective still remains the same. How do you create better strategies and outcomes and decisions for the business? But because of the complexity that has multiplied, disproportionately, it's needed a lot of technological intervention now to keep that in a manageable bound, right? So what we saw, so two things I will fundamentally that have been driving this, right? So the advent of digital and the advent of cloud, right? If you really think about it, digital has brought the customer, the end consumer closer to the organization, and cloud has taken the organization closer to the customer. Now, effectively, what that means, therefore, is how organizations now compete is less determined by their size, but their agility and their ability to create better decisions. Now, if you think about it from a technology standpoint, what are we saying, right? So, if you when we think digital, it's really been about creating better experiences for the customer. It's been about faster fulfillment, right? It is about almost creating the making instant gratification a real thing. If you think about cloud, right? Cloud has, it started again because of the whole internet revolution, but as organizations have been looking at the opportunity, what we have also been seeing is, so if you think about data itself, right? We started with the world of data warehouses, and the world was, you build a data warehouse, you work off the data of it. Then we saw a progression into data lakes, and now we are at a point where we're talking about data lake houses. So the technology, if you think about it, and I'll break it down into a couple of different places. One has been about how do I manage my data? How do I manage my data? How do I store it? How do I access it? How do I govern it? Right, and that's some of the underlying technological shift has been on that front. The second big technological, I would say, impact on the data journey has been how do I monetize it, right? How do I have the data, what do I do with it? Democratizing it is the first step, but where do I get the better outcomes from? And that also is now starting to see a two-way split. One part about is making the information and insights available better and faster, and the right insights, as opposed to the kitchen sink that we've been used to, being thrown the kitchen sink. The second is better strategies, right? What used to be earlier a disconnected series of human interventions using a variety of tools. So your data, if you take, I'll take an example, right? You want to build a better model, better, let's say, marketing outcomes model. There used to be a set of activities that used to involve data engineering, who used to work in their own silo, get the data marked out. Then the data scientist would go to work on it, build the data, build a model, test it, validate it, all of that, and then send it back to the technology team, who will then make sure that it's operationalized in the customer systems. So customer facing systems. So if you think about it today,
you are moving at a faster speed and at a greater scale and complexity for you to function that way, right? Which means the lines between these functions are blurring, which means the enabling technologies need to make sure that this entire thing happens seamless, with less handoffs, with greater integrity and reliability of outcomes. I'll take a pause here.
Sure. No, I think that's a very relevant point what you touched, because essentially what we are trying to unravel out here, there is, and this is what I could actually infer from your narration. There is a metamorphosis which is happening amongst the businesses today, which is what we call reimagine the businesses. Value chains are getting disrupted, and as you rightly said, the intervention of technology in terms of one, aggregating the data, which is through the hyperscalers. Second, it's all about kind of making meaning out of the data, which is where your data monetization starts coming in as part of creating those marketplaces in terms of analytics and AI coming in. Is something which is very apt, because that's the whole evolution, or what I call the journey mapping. The point, Sati, and I want you to elongate as part of narration would be, do organizations, enterprises, irrespective of the scale, understand that this is a journey continuum? Because you can't build a data strategy unless you've figured out what's the right sources of data. You can't monetize the data unless you understand that, look, you've got robust algorithms running under the hood. What's your perception or understanding in terms of, and from an external lens, how these organizations are trying to really look at this particular facet? Do they really get it, or it's more about evangelization, or a lot of, I would say, adequate knowledge seeping in?
So, it's a very interesting question. And sure, Pankaj would be able to add a lot to it as well. From my perspective, what I've been seeing, right, if you think about how do organizations take these decisions and how do they arrive at a viewpoint, previously what we've seen is, analytics used to sit under business functions, data used to sit under IT. It was as simplified as that. Now, what is happening is, because that value chain has become a lot more complex, and which means that it has now exploded out, where you have a lot more stages that data goes through. Governance has become a lot more important, for example. Security has become a lot more critical. Not that it wasn't, but now it is front and center, and there are tools and there are policies and processes and there are regulatory requirements. So if you see, it has exploded a lot more. And because there's so much of technological intervention now happening, what you see is that the roles are shifting as well. So you have, CDOs, you have CDAOs, you have CAOs, and those roles are actually coming and sitting in the middle of the more traditional business function and the more traditional CIO, CTO function. And these organizations, and in some ways, to your point, are organizations getting it? The organizations that are getting it are creating those structures, right? And if you see, organizations that have created those structures, they may not have gotten it, but they're on the way, right? Or they are more mature than others. And some of that guides the conversation, because otherwise what happens is, when you speak to a functional stakeholder, the focus is entirely on the outcomes. It's not so much, or largely on outcomes. It's not about, what's happening in the foundational data layer, or what's happening in data ops. And so if the processes are broken there, so what? As long as I can get an outcome. If you think about, CIOs, their trajectory of thinking is a lot more. How do I call it? They're looking ahead. They're looking foundational. They're not concerned about individual use cases, right? And they're thinking about, how to create strong foundation. Now, how do you bring these two together? So wherever the organizations have created those structures, where you find CDOs in place, where you find chief data and analytics officers in place, they are now creating the right narrative to go forward.
Great. So, Pankaj, one of the things I want to pick up, and Sati touched that point, is about the whole aspect of CXOs understanding the whole journey of data to decisions. And we are taking a generic case here, any enterprise, I mean, irrespective of the size and scale. What is that you see from your perspective about how the CXOs today are gearing up, or have they geared up understanding this whole journey of data to decisions?
Yeah, thanks, Samir, for asking the question. And I'll pick it up from where Sati left. So many a times, we have often heard that the leaders don't get it and we need to teach them. Sometimes you talk to the leaders and they'll say that the analysts don't get it. So clearly there's a bit of a communication gap, and, both parties have to, come closer to each other. So I'll give you a few sort of examples from the past that you and I both can relate to, as we would all have a G lineage. I remember we used to do Six Sigma, and we used to have a process map which used to be called SIPOC, and it used to be like, supplier input, process output, consumer. And then someone said that, starting from the supplier is not a great idea. Let's make it COPIS, COPIS. So start with the customer and go backward. It was a subtle change, but I think it was an important change. And I'll come back to, why I'm saying this, what I'm saying. You talk to someone today and say, who are you? What do you do? I'm an engineer. I'm a backend engineer. I'm an analyst. I'm a data scientist. So a lot of people right now, in my opinion, are thinking about their role or the larger picture from their own silo. Someone is starting from wherever they are, and so the big picture somewhere is missing for a lot of people, right? So I think today what we need more than anyone else is, one, of course, that the business leaders need to understand digital and data. But I would go to the other side to say that our community that we represent need to also understand a lot of things. And a few things which I think, by and large, what I find across the industry that people do not understand is, one, the idea of economics and business and the numbers and the profitability and stuff like that. Business runs on numbers, and just the having the economic orientation of what we are trying to do is just missing. We don't teach people. We don't bring it up in our data science class. We just think we've taught them data science. The second thing that we don't bring up is related to this end-to-end process. The idea that end of the day, there's a process which starts here, it goes there. There are metrics, there are measures, and there are things like that. Third, the idea that there is change management. You are an enabler. You aren't going to do things; someone else is going to do it. So who are they? Have you got sat with the operators, sat with the users, understood what they do? So I think that a lot of surround sound, if I can say so, around data science needs to be understood and appreciated by the data science community, because if they are unable to do that, they'll not be able to connect to the business user. Because if you think about the business user, they are thinking economics, they are thinking behavior change, they are thinking end-to-end process. And if we are unable to connect with that and just think about our algorithm around data science and data engineering, we are the ones who are, I think, missing out on an opportunity to bring large scale change. And clearly, on the other side, leaders have to understand that data and digital is not just a technology or a tool. It's a culture change. It's an organizational dynamic change. There are lots of software aspects that they need to think about: talent, governance, funding, mechanisms, all of those types of things. So I think the short answer, Samir, is both parties have to become more appreciative of each other. I think there's a big gap between the two communities, because business has become too business focused, and data science and digital has become too data science focused. The translation layer, I think, is missing. And I think that the translation layer can be fixed by thinking about some of these aspects about talent and organization design and governance and funding and so forth. There are enough frameworks available in the market that we can apply, and we are using one of them as well. But I think that's where I think the bigger investment needs to happen.
So two shall meet, in fact, at some point of time, which is what I think
Yeah.
all of us are expecting. But I think, yeah, good to have those perspectives, which are absolutely, I would say, very divergent, but very, very symmetrically linked in terms of what we call the conundrum of how the data to decision journey looks like. And at this juncture, Sadi, I want to take your inputs in terms of help us demystify this whole phosphor set of suite of products and solutions what we have. What's the target audience you're catering to? What's the kind of, let's say, problem solving at scale you uh, folks are trying to accomplish? And how does the entire aspect as a part of data to decision when it comes to phosphor will enable organization to jumpstart to a very different journey or reimagining the business altogether?
Thanks for that, Samir. If you think about the 5 products that make up the Phosphor suite, why those 5 products, right? And there was a lot of debate, should we even have 5 products, right? It is a complex thing to run a portfolio of 5 products. But what we realized, the 2 deciding factors were this. One, each of them was unique IP. There are differentiators we've created in each of those. But more importantly, collectively, they span that continuum. today that data goes through in an organization from the point it is generated or it enters the organization to the point it is actually consumed. So if I were to split it up, right, what used to be our traditional ETL, sort of activity, that has evolved. ETL has become ELT, and there is, people are saying data ops. Data ops is the real meat of that particular stage of activities, right? Which means, is my data in the right place, right structure, and accessible, right? From there, we used to directly head off into say, okay, now let's start doing data science of it. But what we realized in between, there are two things that have become important. One is, how do I make my data scientists more efficient? Second, how do I make my outcomes more reliable? Right now, reliability is important because now the data nature of data itself has become overly complex. There is structured, there's unstructured, there's streaming, there's batch, all kinds of things, right? Industry 4.0, Pankaj, you mentioned, right? So you have sensor data. So all kinds of data is now coming in. How do you trust what are you looking at? So governance, lineage, these have become very important, right? And that's where we have, a product called Optic. The first product, I forgot to mention it. The first product is called Spectra. That is a data ops product. The second product is Optic, which is a catalog product. So one part of it is governance and lineage. The second part of it, which is how do you make downstream consumers more efficient, is discoverability. Can you discover your data, right data assets quickly, right? Uh, the other story that is happening here, we talked about, that I mentioned briefly, is unstructured data. Everybody is now wanting to unlock unstructured data because structured data, most organizations have some handle on. Now it's really more about how much more can you milk out of it. But what about unstructured data? Tons of it is lying inside and doesn't really get utilized. So the third product is Aspect. It's an IDP product, which essentially, very quickly, in a matter of, days, literally, you can start extracting structure out of unstructured data. So these three, if you see collectively, are the foundational layer. They are the dirty part of data, so to say, as I like to call, the pupa part of the data butterfly, right? And then from there, if you see, comes the monetization journey. That's the butterfly spreading its wings, and that now takes two journeys, right? One is sort of operational strategies, and which is classic data science. How do you do those better? There, the product that we have called Refract, it's essentially an MLOps product, which we believe should eventually become an ML engineering product. Because the bigger challenge with AI, and we'll have time to talk about that today, is while there's so much buzz around it, we are struggling to make it real, right? We are struggling to productionize them. And today that needs, again, a lot of manual activity, manual intervention that should start going away, which is what Refract focuses on. The other journey that data takes is insights. How do you improve the decision making for management, right? And today, the only thing that, from a product and technology standpoint, option that leadership has is BI, right? And so what we are trying to do with Lumen, which is the fifth and final product, is Lumen starts where BI ends. Because for us, if you think about BI is essentially making information visible. All the information you have, make it visible. It's throwing the kitchen sink at people, saying you decide what you want out of it. From that point to get to strategy, there is a whole set of things you need to do, right? The whole ad hoc analysis that we say, which to me is really four things. Can I ask why? Right? I'm looking at information. Can I say why something happened, changed, went up, went down? Right? Can I ask what will be? Which means obviously we all have forecasts, but there are new matrices that I want to know what might that look like next quarter. So what will be? And then the third is I have these decision inputs now. Can I do what ifs? And then the fourth is you don't know what you don't know, which is things are happening out there, events are happening out there. How do I spot it, right? Without a person actually trying to look at it. These are the core four things that Lumen does, and to extend the insight outcome for decision makers so that they can make better decisions. So these 5 products collectively, we call it, we call it the data commerce journey, because if you think about it, what's happening out there in the world, organizations are a lot more concerned about monetizing their data now, right? The journey so far has been managing data, but now it's like, how do we make money out of it? So the data commerce is what we see being served by these 5 products.
So that's a very, I would say, apt description, Sadi, what you gave about this whole data to decision continuum by introducing these 5 layered suite of, I would say, products, and each one of them catering to a specific need and, I would say, a specific nuance in terms of how organizations should go through this whole decision making journey. And one of the related aspect, Pankaj, I'll come to this is, and you heard Sati saying in terms of the various uh, set of solutions and products which are catering to this whole 9 yards of data to decisions. So when it comes to this strategic consideration in terms of how organizations should look at buying these products, internalizing these solutions, or kind of looking at embedding capabilities within the organization life cycle or value chain, what do you think should be kind of done in terms of enhancing or accelerated? Because one of the common thing I'm trying to just unearth from both of you is that look, it's not easy. There are cultural nuances, there are aspects in terms of evangelization, each and everyone's appetite to understand what. So, what should be the consideration, Pankaj, in your view, when an organization should go for these kind of products and solutions? What is that they should be considering in terms of taking it and internalizing it in terms of totality?
Sure, Samir. So I'll tell you what we are doing, and
Mhm.
from there I'll kind of try to abstract what I think others could also potentially consider, because every organization is different. They have a different context. They're starting from a different place. So the way we are driving what we are calling business transformation using digital technologies is to do it in 3 parts. I mean, we have a framework which says at the top part, think of it as the strategy layer. The middle layer is, you can call it, the operating model layer, and the bottom layer is the technology layer, which is what we all tend to focus on. So we're starting at the top, saying, okay, what's your strategy? Now, how do we convert this strategy into its digital enablers? Because every strategy can have a place where digital can do something, and digital is a broad set of all these technology that we talk about. So we have a sort of a framework to work with the business to say, here is what digital can do in 3 buckets: enable, optimize, and transform. So it's a Gartner framework that we operate, but frankly, any framework could do, and digital could do all of those 3 things. So we kind of do brainstorming. Where can digital help you? So we have a, think of it as a set of inventory of what all is possible. So that you have a digital roadmap or a digital ambition of sort. Then you say, okay, out of all of these things that we need to do, there are a bunch of things that can be done by getting partners, buy products off the shelf, or maybe something similar that someone has done. Maybe someone has that capability, they have done a project or whatever. So bring on partners off the shelf, and whatever is core to you or whatever is not available outside in the market. And there are certain things that we do as an organization. Every organization has something core to them. Those are the things where you deploy your own resources to develop that. So that is the approach that we are following, that partner first and build next. And you have to do both. I don't think you can do either or. These days, people keep asking this make versus buy question. And I always say it is always make and buy. The composition might change in terms of percentages and this, that, and the other. But today, you cannot not have an ecosystem. All of us have to operate in an ecosystem. And if someone tell me I can do it all by myself, I think they will miss out on something. And if someone also tells me that I won't do anything myself, they'll also miss out on something. So you've got to figure out what that core is, and that could be whatever. So I think I would therefore say that start with the why, start with your goals, and then figure out what are some of those things which are easily available out in the market, and just use that, and then build your capability on top of that. So I see the opportunity for all the 5 modules that Sati mentioned could have a role to play in some business or function. May not be that all the 5 will be utilized in a business or a function, but I do see that when I look around the portfolio of our own companies, and they pretty much represent the entire Indian industry, I would say. I think there is a place for each of those modules, but it will depend on that business or that function, their stage of maturity. What are they willing? In some places, we see that they don't even have an ERP or a basic data system. So of course, they have to start there. And in some others, they are quite mature, and then they can buy something else. So I think that's how I would think about advising someone to say, look at your goal, your strategy, And within that, start by partnering and buying the best product out there. And like I said, Phosphor would have a big market in my opinion.
Awesome.
Sorry, I wanted to add something because you triggered something very interesting. One thing that I will tell you, product companies get challenged with, and I say get challenged with in the sense, challenged because they are not able to get the right perspective to it, which is like you said, what is the outcome, right? Of a customer using this product. Now, all products, at least the best products, but all products really start with the user in the center. But it's a very narrow view. It's a very narrow view of that user. It's a set of tasks because products by definition have to be very laser sharp, so that whatever they do well. But in that challenge, what we sometimes do not realize, and a lot of product companies have seen that challenge, is they don't understand that, or now they're starting to understand, I should put it this way, that the customer organizations landscape is also becoming complex, right? In terms of data, in terms of your functional needs, different functional needs, and the amount of technical debt that has been created. There is things that you invested in. So the view traditionally has been, I have done this is the best thing, but what if you have something else? I don't know, go throw it away or something. So I think that is starting to change. So one of the things that I think Gartner called out last year, but we had been actually working that way from before that, but they gave it a name like Gartner does. They call it composability, right? So they think composability is an important construct, which means your product should be not a monolithic module. Ideally, you should be able to break it down into components and use the components that are needed with existing technological investments. Right now, why I bring that point up, Pankaj, because when you were talking about it, right, and it's very true, right, and your organization is a microcosm of that. But out there, if you see, there are organizations at different stages of maturity, and your one size fits all product will not work, or technology of any kind will not work. So technology should be modular, and it should focus beyond just the user and the user's tasks to say what are the organizational outcomes you create in the best possible fashion.
So Sati,
And for
just
the
for me to
audience,
understand this
who are just
composability
listening with the Pankaj, I'll just kind of chip in and I want you to continue. This is for the ones who are listening with rapt attention to note that this is what happened when two hard hitters come across. The job of a moderator is just to listen to them, absorb the nuggets of wisdom which is coming out. And let me tell you, it's coming out in a way because they've done it, they've experienced it, and they had those interactions with a whole host of stakeholders. Pankaj, please continue.
Thanks, Samir. So this composability I haven't heard before. So I'm wondering, Sati, that we all talk about API-based microservices, modular architecture, all of that. So does composability have any other element or some other nuance that some of us have not thought about, or what does composability bring new to the table that I don't want to say it's a old wine in new bottle, but usually every terminology does bring some additional nuance that we may not have thought about. So I'm trying to look for that needle in that haystack.
So it's not. It's. I think it's a recognition of that ask that
Idea.
I should be able to consume component wise. What does it translate to? So if you see, like you said, the entire microservices architecture and having an API based, input output layer allows you to work with different things, right? So that's the fundamental starting point. But if you think about it at a slightly deeper philosophy, it is still at the input and output level, which means everything in between is still a monolith, right? If you said, I want only these X microservices, is my product architecture designed to give you only that X set of microservices? That is where composability extends that idea. The physical sort of manifestation of that is basically, do products have SDKs, which is software development kits, right? Best example is, iOS apps, right? I have complete freedom to choose what app I want to use, what app I want to build, and to choose what the iOS ecosystem has to offer. So I may use the phone sensor, I may use the phone's resolution, or the microprocessing, either processing speeds, whatever. So it's up to me to choose what I want for my outcome. I don't want the rest of it. And how do I do that? Because iOS gives me an SDK, says, here, go build your app using only the things you need. So similarly, products are now starting to think like that, right? Our own products, for example, out of our 5 products, 2 of them are now have full SDKs, right? Other 3 are going that way, but all of them had microservices. To your point, Pankaj, yes, they were there, but to progress it into a fully composable state, there is more things we have needed to do, bring it into an SDK state, so to say.
Great. So
I think you should also, maybe you and I should also invent some terminology to make your product more marketable. So I will propose you can say we have a hyper granular architecture, for whatever that means.
I like it already.
okay, HGA is the new acronym. That is. So extending that conversation from
Yeah,
Pankaj
go on.
Sati, and something very meaningful, and I'm sure there is a bit of, I would say, prescriptive mode out here. Now let's fast track, do a kind of a future forward scenario, 3 years, 4 years down the line. Now, two things which are happening very fast, and both of you articulated very well. One is this whole nature of businesses going through frequent black swan events is going to be a kind of a, let's say, continuous phenomenon. I mean, we'll see enough kind of all these turmoils, gyrations, economic, geopolitical kind of a situations happening. I would say every quarter, if not, I would say more. So that's one. Second, the pace of technology advancements and sophistication will not stop, because I think it's all about organizations really understanding that the journey cannot go through in the way what's it's been through, which means it's a factorial of how fast organizations can change to take and incorporate the technology sophistication which is happening, because the competition is not in terms of how they internalize. The competition is also what we call the AI first or the digital native enterprises, which comes from, I would say, the background and really kind of take your entire, I would say, market share and create a kind of a competitive advantage and moat. Now, future forward, and that's a question to both of you. I want to hear perspective from both of you. To start with you, Stati, is future forward 3 to 5 years from now. How do you think this entire aspect of technologies advancements from AI, analytics, data science looks like? How organizations will consume these set of technologies, product, and solutions? And Pankaj, in terms of your particular, how do you think be able to fast track this journey? Of course, the frameworks and best practices or playbooks will evolve, but could there be a way in terms of they really kind of fast tracking and understanding the situations what they're into? So, Sadi, I would like you to start with, please.
Sure. So, for that to happen, a lot of products have to move from beyond being shiny toys, especially when we talk about AI, right? And to me, there are 2 fundamental things that need to be solved, and they may not be solvable by technology alone. But one of them is how do you make the outcome closer to what the user needs, right? And I'll come back to that in 1 second. The other is basically change management, right? Change management is the biggest challenge today for data science AI adoption to happen, and change management at various levels, right? It is right up to at a management level, which is the one that we probably is more visible, but it's even at the mid layer. It is even within the analysts. Even the analysts today, we trust them to be the expert, but remember, everybody comes from their context. So if somebody's used something, and technology is changing rapidly, are they ready to go to the next technology? Sometimes they're not. So change management is something that is, I think, the biggest hurdle and challenge, if you ask me, to get there. So now coming back to my first point is, how do you break it down? How do you make it, from a technology standpoint, make it easier? And to me, I think fundamentally and personally, I've always felt both technology and data science, I think, work best when they're invisible, right? When there is fewer interaction elements, when there is fewer personal, how do I call it, decision moments, right? Now, I'm not saying it all functions autonomously and nobody has to, there's no human in the loop. That's a different thing, right? That's a separate thing. I'm talking about the everyday interactions at a tool, product, technology level, from the analyst on the ground to leadership up there. How do you make it more invisible? And I think two ways to make that happen. One is we will find AI working for AI and AI working for everything else also, which means that if I have a product, can I get a better decision outcome is an AI algorithm. But how the product operates, how many inputs does it need for me, is also where AI is going to come in. So I think that is one thing I will see happening. We will see seeing more and more of, and we're already seeing that actually. The second is increasing verticalization, right? Everybody, if you see in technology, I mean, right? So if you see Snowflake, there was this big Snowflake summit just a couple of months back, and apart from Snowpark, which is a progression of their core technology, the other big announcement that they had was industry clouds. Now, industry clouds is a term that we started hearing recently, but it's got to become more meaningful. So if you see, you have basic infra clouds, which we know very well, the Googles, the Amazons of the world, and then you had the application clouds, which is your Salesforce, for example. But in the data clouds, which is your Snowflake, or which is so if you think about it in something like a Snowflake, which is a data cloud, there is an increased focus to say, I want to get an industry vertical, right? And that industry vertical cloud will accelerate the time to some of these outcomes. And then AI, in how it is used, will make some of that invisible to the users, so that change management becomes a little easier. These are two, and there are many other things, but these are top two things in my head, at least, that will need to happen in the next few years.
Sure. Pankaj, over to you. Maybe we lost the connection from Pankaj. So, Sadi, one of the things what you talked about, technology being smart, invisible, embedded over there. Now, one of the perspective over there also has been by what I call the naysayers is these exponential technologies take a lot of time in terms of demystification, and often that reckoner or a playbook is not available. And you specifically mentioned about this verticalization. Do you see some of these things evolving in a future forward mode where the verticalization and I would say the playbooks in terms of the technology, I would say play will be much more easier as opposed to what exists today?
Absolutely. I think absolutely. And I think, so if you think about it, right, how will it take shape, right? So if you ask me, things like, having your industry data models that allow you to ingest data faster in your context, right? Now, everything today, if you see from a searchability standpoint, or from being able to use advanced augmented analytics products, you need ontology, right? Do you have industry ontologies that are ready to go, right? Then if you take it forward further, you have this better decisions you are creating because of better models. Now, how do you implement it? How does the implementation even look like? So are there industry workflows that can come in, industry process workflows? So if I am implementing this in insurance, claims, can my product just or the data industry cloud, can it give me these utilities to do these faster with a lot less pain, right? So those are some things that I definitely see happening. The other thing is that as we start using more and more advanced analytics and insights coming out of a product, trustability and transparency is going to start becoming more and more important, right? We are already see the regulatory requirement for explainability of AI models. It's already there. Those frameworks are still evolving. They're not, nothing is done and dusted. They're evolving. They're getting more mature, but they're still meant for data scientists and regulatory bodies. But as management, senior management also starts using these tools, they will need their own version of trustable, explainable, insights. How do you make that happen? Today, for example, Lumen is the only product in the world that actually generates a business narrative on how did it actually run the model, how did it build the model, how did it come up with the insight. So we call it explainable AI for business, right? We will see a lot more of that happening as more and more advanced decisioning AI models get embedded in more decision outcomes.
Great. Pankaj, over to you. I mean, what I think where you left was about this whole future forward aspect of organizations really accelerating their digital AI journey. What's your take on that? What could be a smarter playbook which could evolve in future?
So I always try to bring some analogies from a different world. So I think a lot of consumer needs don't change or haven't changed as much as the supply side. So we are in an age of abundance. So I would give the example of brushing our teeth in the morning. Look at your toothbrush and look at your toothpaste. Frankly, they're all doing the same job that they did maybe 30 years ago. But we have a plethora of toothbrushes, a plethora of toothpaste, and we are still doing it. Maybe we are doing it twice a day because they sold us the idea that you should do it twice or thrice a day or whatever it is. But basic needs haven't changed. So I think the analogy that I see is that end of the day, technology should be like, Sati alluded to, should be so easy to use, so sort of hidden, so pervasive that I should be able to pick up any toothbrush or any other experience consumer. I would sort of give my product managers and other people that sort of benchmark to beat in the future, Samir and Sati.
Yeah, I think one of the things what technology also needs to solve is that seamless network, I would say, play, because the intrusions causes a lot of, I would say, challenges. But I think what we are also trying to realize, and just summing up the conversation, there is a present view, there is a future forward view, and there is a view which needs what I call recalibrations, because the world is not constant. It's going through a lot of gyration. And the pace of technology, as Sati, what you and Pankaj articulated, will not halt. What's important for the organizations, irrespective, agnostic of their size, industry segment, is coming together with a very strategic purpose in terms of how they want to internalize, not only to bring efficiencies and effectiveness in the organization, but to remain competitive and remain, I would say, solvent. Because at these stages, if there are those halts, or I would say the issues or the nuances in the business, then strategies don't help. What helps is what I call a very classic set of technologies which can actually interchange and become part of the strategy. And that's exactly what both of you articulated in terms of how seamlessly these exponential technologies, specifically AI, analytic data science, are intrinsically linked to business strategies. Thank you so much for your anecdotes, illustrations, analogies in the last, I would say, 58 minutes, almost an hour. What we could gather, I would say, is a whole nuggets of information, insights, intelligence. And at some level, that's what I say, when you bring all those hard hitters, what you have to do, sit back, relax, and just listen to them. Thank you so much, Sati, for your time. Thank you so much, Pankaj. Really appreciate part of you being towards this panel discussion. And that brings us to the end of this Fosfor-3AI panel discussion. It was anchored by Samir, and Sati and Pankaj were the panel members. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.